Season 2 is underway, and if you're playing Demonology, there's a lot more to the spec than just following a priority list and hoping your demons do the rest. In this guide, we're covering the best talent builds, how Demonology actually works, our core rotation, Tyrant and Implosion optimization, stat priority, and gearing for Season 2. But more importantly, I want to show you exactly how to think about the spec, because your rotation isn't a script. Your resources, your Tyrant Windows, and even your demonic core RNG are going to change what you should be doing from pull to pull. So let's break it all down. Unlike most specs, when you're directly responsible for the majority of your damage, your demons are all contributing damage while you continue generating the resources needed to summon even more of them. There's you, and then there's the army of demons you've irresponsibly unleashed upon the world of Warcraft, TM. And this is where Implosion becomes so important. Implosion takes 6 of your active imps and converts them into a burst of AoE, while refunding half of them and buffing their damage with sustained cleave. Implosion also gives us a chance at gaining cores, which feeds directly back into our resource loop. So your imps aren't just something you summon and forget about, they're a resource you constantly want to manage and convert into damage and cores. Before we get into the specific opener and rotation, I want to take a step back and explain how the spec actually functions. Because once you understand the resource system and how your demons fit into it, the rotation becomes much easier to follow. At its core, Demonology is all about managing your resources, building your demonic army, and turning that army into as much damage as possible. The first and most important resource we need to manage is soul shards. We can hold a maximum of 5, and we're constantly generating and spending them throughout the rotation. Shadow Bolt generates 1, while Demon Bolt generates 2 through our demonic core procs. Our one and only spender is Hand of Gul'dan, which consumes 3 soul shards and summons a set of wild imps. So right away, one of the biggest things you need to watch out for is overcapping. If you're already at 4 or 5 shards and continue generating more, those resources are wasted, and every wasted shard is damage you're never getting back. Demonic cores are the other major resource we need to manage, and just like soul shards, you don't want to sit on them, but you also don't want to mindlessly burn them the second they appear. Demonic cores are generated from our expiring imps through Implosion and Hand of Gul'dan casts, while Dreadstalkers guarantee 2 cores when they expire. The goal is to keep both resources moving without overcapping either one. And this becomes even more important when we add Diabolist into the equation. With Diabolist, the demons summoned from our shard consumption will proc our Shadow Bolt and Hand of Gul'dan with increased effectiveness. Infernal Bolt generates 3 soul shards, which means you need to account for those shards before you press it. Ruination is a little different. Outside of your Tyrant window, Ruination is free and counts as a cast of Hand of Gul'dan. So in most situations, you want to use it immediately. But during that window, Ruination generates 1 soul shard. So just like Infernal Bolt, you need to account for that before casting it. And this really is the theme you'll start to see throughout Demonology. You're constantly generating resources from multiple places. So the goal isn't just to press abilities when they light up. It's making sure you have room for the shards they give you. So the basic resource loop is simple. Use your demonic cores to generate soul shards, then turn those shards into more demons with Hand of Gul'dan. And once we understand the resources we're managing, that brings us to the other half of Demonology, our demons. Tyrant is a 1-minute cooldown, and once summoned, your Apex window activates. During that window, every cast of Hand of Gul'dan refunds 1 soul shard, which means we're able to spend our resources much more aggressively and get significantly more value out of our demonic army. Before you summon your Tyrant, you want your Dreadstalkers active so Tyrant can extend their duration. Beyond that, you don't need some massive setup. You mainly want to make sure you cap your shards beforehand to take advantage of that window. Once our Apex window is active, the goal is simple. Generate and spend as many soul shards as possible before that window closes. Not only will this generate more imps and demons from the Diabolist tree, but every other Hand of Gul'dan cast will summon a powerful demon to fight for you. That demon will last even after your Apex window closes, dealing both single target and AoE damage. And once that window ends, you're back to generating resources normally and planning your next Tyrant setup. So if you remember nothing else from this section, remember this. Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt generate generate soul shards. Spending soul shards builds your army. Implosion converts those demons into more damage and resources, and Tyrant gives us our major window to spend those resources as aggressively as possible. Now let's put all of that together and go through the opener and rotation. Starting off with our Diabolist single target rotation, we're going to start by precasting a Demon Bolt about 4 seconds before the pull starts. Then Implord, Dreadstalkers, and capping our shards with Shadow Bolt into Demonic Tyrant. Trinkets, Potions, Racials, 2 Hand of Gul'dans into a 6 Imp Implosion, then Demon Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, Demon Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, and from here we're just reacting to demonic core procs and filling in the gaps with Shadow Bolt when we run out of cores, making sure not to overcap on soul shards and summoning your Dreadstalkers on cooldown. The main thing you want to focus on is getting as many Hand of Gul'dan casts off before your Dominion of Argus buff expires. Moving into Soul Harvester, we're going to start by siphoning 2 Imps into precasting a Shadow Bolt, then Implord, Dreadstalkers into Demonic Tyrant, Trinkets, Potions, Racials, 2 Hand of Gul'dans, and then back into our core rotation of building shards with Demon Bolt, spending them with Hand of Gul'dan, and filling in the gaps with Shadow Bolt when we run out of cores. For Mythic Plus, our rotation is going to be exactly the same as our single target rotation for Diabolist, so you can use that as reference. The only difference is opening with Shadow Bolt instead of Demon Bolt. But I wanted to take the time here to go deeper into Tyrant setups and Implosions specifically, because there's a lot of different information out there, and this should hopefully clear up any confusion and help you gain a deeper understanding of why we're holding or using certain abilities during our rotation. After our first Tyrant is over, the goal should be planning the impact of our next Tyrant. That way, we can get the most value out of it by pooling resources once it starts to come off of CD. And by resources, I specifically mean the time left on our Dreadstalkers so we can extend them, the time left on our charges of Demonic Core, and capping our soul shards to get the most value out of our Apex window. So let's take this one by one. Because the pulls in Mythic Plus vary so much, the strategy isn't just to hold a set of dogs to pair immediately with Tyrant. It's to extend their duration before they expire. You want as much uptime on your dogs as possible. So even if your Tyrant has less than 12 seconds left before it comes off cooldown, that's time wasted where they could be dealing damage. The only thing that matters is that you extend them with Tyrant, so you're not waiting for them to come off cooldown again to pair with that window. Demonic cores are interesting because there's so much RNG involved in how you gain them, but essentially, you want to pool as many cores as you can for your Apex window. Keep in mind, your stacks of Demonic core will always vary, which is why there's no specific rule that tells you to hold them or spend them at any given time. There also isn't a specific number of stacks where you should always hold, or a specific point where you should always spend. Maybe you're approaching your Tyrant with no stacks. Maybe you already have 2. Maybe you're sitting close to the cap and continuing to generate more. So instead of following a rigid rule, you need to look at what's actually happening with your resources. If your Tyrant is coming up soon and you have room to safely hold your Demonic cores, start pooling them for your Apex window. But if you're getting close to the Demonic core cap and have a chance of wasting additional procs, spend them. There's no value in holding onto resources for your Tyrant if you're throwing them away in the process. This will tie directly into Implosion, which somehow continues to be one of the hottest topics in the demonology community. And the reason for that is the RNG behind Demonic core generation. The most important thing to understand here is there's a big difference between what's technically correct on paper and what actually happens in the real world of Warcraft. TM.
There's sims and there's actuality, and damage profiles do vary.
So on paper, holding your Implosion until you have fewer than 2 stacks of Demonic core can result in a stronger Apex window. The reasoning behind that is that Implosion can generate up to 4 Demonic cores, giving you more resources to fuel your Apex window. And that's the key word here, can. Because in actual gameplay, you're almost never guaranteed those 4 stacks. Sometimes you implode and get 1 core. Sometimes you get 2. A lot of the time, you get absolutely nothing. And every once in a while, the stars align, the planets are in position, and Blizzard decides you can have all 4. So when you're holding Implosion, specifically in hopes of generating 3 or 4 cores for your Apex window, you're essentially gambling. you're potentially giving up damage from to hell and back, specifically in multi-target fights, in exchange for the chance that your implosion gives you enough cores to make that hold worth it. And in practice, the odds aren't always going to be in your favor. Can holding it result in more damage? Absolutely. And it should be your main focus in single target. But it could also result in you getting 0 cores, while sacrificing AoE damage that you could have taken immediately, in hopes of hitting the demonic core jackpot. And that really is the difference between playing the spec on paper and playing it in an actual dungeon or raid. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make that choice based on the situation in front of you.
I don't want to implode, sir.
No, you don't.
For the majority of raid encounters, we're sticking with the same gold standard setup, Diabolist. It gives us a strong balance between priority damage and consistent cleave, so this is the build I'd recommend starting with for most bosses this season. There are a few situations where you can adjust depending on what the encounter demands, but generally, you want to stick with the balanced setup rather than building specifically for one damage profile. If you play Demonology in Season 1 at midnight, this build should look very familiar. We're still looking for that balance Diabolist brings between strong AoE, reliable priority damage, and the ability to get consistent value out of our Tyrant Windows. And with our new tier set increasing Wild Imp and Implosion damage, we're getting even more value out of the Imp focused portion of this build. The core setup is still built around extending the duration of our Dreadstalkers with Demonic Tyrant and converting our Imp's damage into consistent cleave with the synergy between Implosion and to hell and back. We're keeping the same talents that reinforce that damage profile while maintaining enough single target pressure that we stay competitive with the so-called meta specs flooding the Mythic Plus scene. And that's why I really like this as our default Mythic Plus build. You're not building specifically for the perfect pull, you're building for the dungeon as a whole. Now, Soul Harvester is something you can play in Mythic Plus, but I wouldn't treat it as our default setup. The appeal of Soul Harvester is that it gives us a faster ramp into our Tyrant window and holds stronger value when we're dealing with fewer targets. But we give up some of that consistent AoE and stacked cleave that makes Diabolist so reliable in larger pulls. Last but not least is our best in slot gear this season. This list is made for long-term endgame progression as opposed to short-term damage gains. Depending on the content you're doing, bonus rolling mythic bosses will be your best bet as it drops myth 6 out of 6 gear and now only costs 1 coin. If you're not a mythic raider or plan to step into mythic later in the season, you'll benefit from bonus rolling heroic bosses and plus 10 keystones or above. And again, don't treat any of this as a strict best in slot shopping list. The best upgrade for your character can change dramatically depending on the content you're doing, the gear you have, and the specific pieces you're replacing. Rather than blindly chasing a piece of loot because it's on a BIS list, use a sim to see what actually gives your character the biggest upgrade. So before we wrap things up, if you take nothing else away from this guide, remember these 3 things. Number 1, don't waste your resources. Don't overcap soul shards or demonic cores. And when you're preparing for an Apex window, pool as many resources as you can safely without throwing them away in the process. Number 2, make your Tyrant windows count. Don't just hold Tyrant forever waiting for the perfect pull. Plan around the encounter, know what's coming next, and make sure you're getting as much value out of each window as possible. And finally, don't play Demonology like a script. Your resources, your procs, the size of the pull, the encounter, and even your demonic core RNG are going to change what you should be doing. The better you get at recognizing those situations and making the right decision in the moment, the more value you're going to get out of the spec. If you can lock in those fundamentals, you're going to be in a really good spot for Season 2. If you found this guide helpful, a thumbs up is always appreciated. It genuinely helps the channel, especially with more niche demonology content like this. And if there's something you want me to cover next, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for ways to make these guides better and dig deeper into the parts of demonology that don't get enough attention. Now go lead your army to victory, send your tyrants into oblivion, and whatever you do, don't feed your imps after midnight.